وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
And assalamu alaikum to our audience for joining us again to exploring the last 10 surahs of the Quran. Today we're going to be diving into Surah Al-Kawthar. We're very glad to have you here with us and exploring the Quran here today. We have Imam Adam, head Imam in one of the biggest mosques in the United States, who'll be guiding us through the Quran, helping us with tafsir and making sure we're on the right path when we're discussing it. And we have Kareem, a member of that community, which will also be helping us and unpacking it, and we'll be looking into how we can apply this into day-to-day life, discussing some reflections on today's era. So I think I'll start off and I'll introduce the surah. Today's surah is Al-Kawthar, which translates to abundant good. And I'll just read the opening of that, an explanation of that from the Study Quran, which is our tafsir of choice for this series. And I'll begin now, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Most commentators maintain that Al-Kawthar is an early Meccan surah, but some exegetes, such as Ibn Kathir, take a report from Anas ibn Malik that this verse was revealed while the messenger was among us in the mosque, as an indication that it was revealed in Medina at the Prophet's mosque. If this is an authentic report, then it is most likely from the Medinian period, as Anas ibn Malik did not meet the Prophet until after the Prophet's migration to Medina. The shortest surah of the Quran, it takes its name from the mention of abundant good, Kawthar, in the first verse, a reference to the blessings of heaven that is subject to various interpretations. According to Al-Wahidi, this surah was revealed in response to a specific incident. Whenever the messenger of God was mentioned, Al-As ibn Wa'il al-Sahmi would say, "Leave him be. He is just a man without posterity. He has no offspring," alluding to the fact that the Prophet's son Abdullah died as a child. Were he to die, no one would mention him again, and you would be rid of him. This is the quote from that specific incident. And so God revealed, "From truly we have bestowed abundant good upon thee," to the end of the surah. According to another account, Anas ibn Malik said, "While we were with the messenger of God in the mosque, he dozed off into a slumber. Then he lifted his head, smiling. We said, 'O messenger of God, what has caused you to laugh?' He replied, 'Verily, a surah was revealed unto me.' Then he recited the surah and said, 'Do you know what Kawthar is? It is a river that my Lord has promised me, and it has abundant goodness. It is a pool to which my community, Ummah, will be brought on the day of judgment, and its containers are as numerous as the stars in the sky.'" And that is the end of the introduction from the Study Quran. So I think what we can do now, after you've had that introduction, I think we'll go into reading it before going into any discussion. So I'll invite Imam Adam, inshallah, to help us out with that, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. And the translation of that is, indeed, we have bestowed a great good upon you. Indeed, we have granted you, O Prophet, abundant goodness. So pray and sacrifice to your Lord alone. Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Certainly, your enemy, or the one who hates you, is truly cut off from any goodness, as it was mentioned in the explanation about what it means to be cut off. So we'll go back to the top there. Oh man, a lot of switching around, Laith. What's going on? All right. So, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. We have granted you, O Prophet, abundant goodness. And what was mentioned here about the Kawthar, what does it actually mean? There's tafsir about that as well, which is that Kawthar is the river in paradise, and we will learn about that, and you will read about that as well. Um, but this surah is revealed just to console the Prophet, peace be upon him, and to tell him that what's being said about you, don't pay heed to it, because for you is waiting a great reward in the hereafter. And as an everyday Muslim, as an everyday Muslim, our deen is, you know, is under attack, right? Our deen is under attack, and it has been for 1400 years, because shaitan is the one who attacks it. Shaitan incites people against it. And so when you feel that sense of pain over what's going on, and you feel that sense of pain over the suffering of Muslims, you feel that sense of pain over how people don't see the truth of Islam, then remember that Allah has prepared for the believers, for the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, much good that's waiting for us in the hereafter. And so when we are becoming overwhelmed, when we're becoming overwhelmed by what's being said about us, by what's being said about Islam, what's being said about the Prophet ﷺ, what is the action that we should take? We should salli li rabbika wanhar, pray and sacrifice to Allah. That's it. Pray and sacrifice to Allah. That is the response. That is the ultimate best response. And know that the one who is saying words against you, the ones that is saying words against the Prophet or against Islam, they are the one that are cut off. They will be cut off from every good. As you will see, they will be cut off from every good, not only in the hereafter, but in this life as well.
Jazakallah khair for that explanation, Sheikh. And if we would like, I can jump into the tafsir of that first one, or would we like to reflect on that a bit before that? Up to you. Or we can jump into tafsir, because there's tafsir for each verse of that. They're all together. Well, they're all separate, sorry, I mean. Let's start off with that. So I'll go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Let's do verse by verse. Let's do the first verse,
Verse by
and
verse,
then
and
we'll talk about it.
Sounds good, inshallah. So I'll start off with the first verse here, which is, truly we have bestowed abundant good upon thee. Abundant good translates kothar, which derives kathir, meaning much, abundant or copious. It is used to indicate something that is abundant in number, measure, weight, or quality, and there are at least 16 different opinions regarding its meaning in this context. The most widespread opinion regarding it as a proper name referring to a river or pool in the garden. Some Muslims will thus use the phrase sitting by Kawthar as a reference to being in paradise. Other opinions relate abundant good to the gift of prophecy, the Quran, or various aspects of Islam, such as the daily prayers, the two testimonies, the Shahadatain, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God, or the light within the breast that guides one to religion. Some commentators take abundant good as a reference to the abundance of the Prophet's progeny. The association with a river in paradise finds the strongest support in the Hadith literature. In a widespread account, Anas ibn Malik said, when the Prophet has made to ascend the heavens, he said after his return, I came upon a river, the banks of which were made of tents of hollow pearls. I asked Gabriel, what is this river? He replied, this is Kawthar. According to another account, Kawthar is a river in the garden whose banks are of gold, and it flows over pearls and rubies. Its scent is finer than musk, and its water is sweeter than honey and whiter than milk. Another account joins the river to the other gifts bestowed upon the Prophet. It is related that Abu Bishr mentioned Sa'ad ibn Jubair, said that Ibn Abbas said regarding Kawthar,
Sa'id ibn Jubayr.
Sa'id ibn Jubair said that Ibn Abbas said regarding Kawthar, that it is the good that God bestowed upon His Messenger. I said to Sa'id I said that is the good that God has bestowed upon His Messenger. I said to Sa'id ibn Jubair. But the people claim that it is a river in the garden, Sa'id said. The river in the garden is part of the good that God has bestowed upon His Messenger. If you want to see references to the river or pool in the Hadith literature, see the introduction of the surah, which we went over. Al-Tabrasi notes that all these sayings are particular aspects of the whole, which is the abundant good in the two abodes, heaven and this world. There we are.
All right.
So we can open up
So I think one of
for
the things that's mentioned here, which is important to kind of think about, is that
yeah.
the Gopher is not just a river in paradise, but that coming from the word kathura, which means to be abundant or to be a lot, from it is kathir, which means a lot, and from it is kothar, um, which is the representation of the abundance of abundant good. That is what we have from Allah subhanallah. And what is that abundant good? It could be literally everything, right? If we truly think about it, the good that Allah has given us is so much, right?
Mm.
And so when the negativity is bringing you down, think of the abundant good that Allah has given you. And as soon as you start thinking about it, you will realize Allah has given you family, Allah has given you comfort, Allah has given you security, Allah has given you food, Allah has given you drink, Allah has given you a roof over your head. You just think of all, you can keep going in terms of the abundant good that Allah has given you. When you are surrounded by negativity, you can still find, if
Mm,
you simply reflect, you can find abundant good around you.
mm. The bit I kind of found significant there, which kind of spoke to me some, was the light within you that guides you to religion. Is it's something I reflect on. There you very well, you might not have been born Muslim, or you might not have never been introduced to Islam, or you could have heard Islam and just turned around the other way, and you wouldn't have had any of those benefits to you in this dunya and akhirah. Those are huge blessings upon you by being upon this path, and those blessings upon dunya and akhirah, and that blessing in you that you even accepted that to begin with. That one blessing enough is enough for you to appreciate that this is could have gone completely the other way. One day, and it's something really I think we need to treasure. Is it's when we're doing all these actions. It's not up to you. You should pray to God that God keeps this. Allah keeps this sensitivity to your Islam inside of you, that you don't have your heart hardened. That's kind of what I got from this as well, as that appreciation of what actually Allah has put inside of you in that sense.
Mm. It's hard to not talk about the entire surah holistically because it's only 3 ayat. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to talk about it ayah by ayah, I think, just due to the nature of how short it is. Which is, obviously kind of paradoxical in a way. It talks about abundance. It talks about, like you said, kathura. It talks about
Mm.
something that goes on forever, and yet it's 3 ayat, right? SubhanAllah, it's very
Yeah.
interesting.
SubhanAllah.
Sometimes that's all you need, right? You don't need a long, windy kind of thing. You just kind of need something like this is what you need to do.
Mm.
It's also like, sometimes like you're trying to make a meeting like in an Ataynak al situation. I don't know. It reminds me of, it's like life is short, but the implications are long, you know? Like you get a few years here to putter around and do stuff,
Mm.
but then it gets multiplied by infinity. It goes on and on and on, subhanAllah. But in terms of something that jumps out at me from Ayah 1, even though it's hard not to talk about everything altogether, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar, like you've already been given it, right?
Yeah.
Al-kawthar is yours. It's been given to you. It's like past tense, right, Sheikh? And it just reminds me of so many of these surahs towards the end of the Quran. Surah al-Duha, Surah al-Shams, Surah al-Kawthar, in which like the love of Allah for the Prophet ﷺ is so apparent. The consoling, that sweetness, you know. Like I remember
Mm.
the first time I read the translation Surah Al-Duha, I was like, oh my god, it's like you could feel the love like oozing from the page. SubhanAllah. The amount of comfort that the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving to the Prophet in his moments of weakness and the times where other people are attacking him, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to his defense. And it's such a strong and such a enveloping defense, you know. And in this ayah, right, that's what they're saying. You've been given it. You've already been given abundance. In addition, like Adam was mentioning, you know, Sheikh Adam, that it is also like a literal spring in Jannah. And if I understand correctly, it's the source of all of its water. As you mentioned, it's wider than milk, sweeter than honey, the fragrance of musk, subhanAllah, the kind of things that your mind can't actually imagine. Pearls on its shores, flowing with gold. It's impossible. Like it's something that's not of this world, so you can't really imagine exactly what it'd be like in this world. But that first thing that jumps out to me is just this this building up of the reputation of the Prophet ﷺ. Like it's in Surah, it was Surah Shar, I think. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرًا. Your reputation, the thing that these people are claiming upon you, that your reputation, people won't remember you, right? Like what you have is lost. Khalas, like maybe you've come to bring societal change, but they're saying that this message will die with you. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar, like your reputation is set. You know what I'm saying? Like it's already been guaranteed. The good that you've been given in this world and also the next world. That love of Allah for the Prophet ﷺ is the first thing that jumps out to me.
SubhanAllah. Wow.
I think there's also, I mean, I'm reflecting on the previous surahs that we did as well. So it starts with Surah Al-Fil, right, which talks about the year of the elephant. And then Surah Quraysh, which reminds the Quraysh of Allah's blessing over them when He protected them in the year of the elephant, and then in their travels and in their everything that they did, in their caravans and their trade. Um, and then Surah Al-Ma'un talks about how they have so much and yet they do not pay heed to the orphan or to those in need, and they refuse even small acts of good. Ma'un, right? And then we come here. So there's a good that Quraysh has from security and food and these worldly material blessings.
Yeah.
But the Prophet, peace be upon him, in this surah is told that his good is far greater than those material goods, right? Material goods are one place, but guidance from Allah, having a path, having the great honor of prophethood, right? That good is so much greater than the good that the Quraysh received.
100%.
So that's how I kind of relate these 3-4 surahs together. And it's a beautiful way to conclude the Quran, right? This is the conclusion of the Quran. These are the last verses, the last surahs, last verses of the Quran.
Bring us from the dunya to the akhirah in that sense, and
Lathan,
position
to mention
to us.
something earlier about this idea of gratitude, right? Like subhanAllah, like the fact that you can even be guided towards Islam at all is like one of the biggest blessings you can receive. The second ayah, right? Like you've already been given this good, so you should be praying to Allah. You should be sacrificing, right? There's this concept of this relationship we have with Allah, the servant and master relationship. There's a narration I recall. If I may get some of the details incorrect, so forgive me for that. But one of the companions, probably Aisha, she saw that the Prophet was standing in prayer for a long time, and his feet were swollen. Subhanallah. And she's like, "You're praying so much, Rasulullah, but you're Rasulullah. Like, aren't you already forgiven? If any of us is going to be forgiven, it'll be you, right? But you're doing so much. You're striving so hard." And he says, "Shouldn't I be a grateful servant because of all these blessings, right?" And it's just like this tying between the first and second ayah, Surah Al-Kawthar. Like you've been given this good. So then the fa at the beginning is telling you, because of this good that you've been given, the blessings Allah has given you, then be a grateful servant. Worship Him truly and sacrifice to Him. Sheikh Jaban used to say that the wanhar here refers to like big sacrifices, like not little ones, but you should truly be striving to sacrifice things to Allah.
But
That's an echo of what Laith was saying earlier about how we need to be grateful about these things.
But your addition there, when you and that hadith you mentioned, when you see people, we have hadith and recollections of people looking at the Prophet, oh, you're praying so much. That's, I think, quite impactful for mu'min today. It's like this is the Prophet. This is, of anybody that's going to be accepted, it's him. So if he's praying like this, how on earth should I be praying? What chance do I have? It's such a kind of punch to the heart in a good way, in the sense of wakes you up. Like, this is obviously I think part of it is example setting. This is the Prophet came, and that's the example for us to take. But also it makes us really sit and question. It's like, so the Prophet, out of every human being, has the best understanding of Allah and the best understanding of dunya and akhirah. And this is the example we're given. And there's this huge focus that maybe a lot of us don't take. And it's just this question of, well, if he's not accepted, he's asking for forgiveness. And we're not asking for forgiveness. What's going on here? What's the piece we're missing? And that's a real question, I guess, that's posed to us. We could look back on that hadith which you mentioned, and that's instant point of reflection of, okay, so this person's forgiven, and I'm not forgiven necessarily. So you need to be on some sort of different track than what you're doing now, in that regard. Jazakallah khair for that addition, 100%. Should we go into the tafsir from the next verse and see if that gives us some more pearls to explore, inshallah?
Yes.
Sounds good. Pearls, I guess that was on my mind from the previous one. Not usually in my vocab. So pray to thy Lord and sacrifice, which I think Karim brought us nicely into. Most interpret so pray as a command to perform the obligatory prayers, as it is connected to the command to sacrifice. Others say it indicates the prayer of the feast of sacrifice, Eid al-Adha, which is part of the rites of Hajj and comes at its end. In accordance with this verse and a well-known hadith, most maintain that the prayer must precede the sacrifice in order for the sacrifice to be accepted. And sacrifice translates wanhar, if that was correct, which could also mean and raise your hands. In this interpretation, it is taken as a reference to the practice of raising hands to the ear during prayer. All schools of law agree that this should be done at the opening of the canonical prayer, while saying, God is great, Allahu Akbar, marking the entry into the sacred rite. According to the Maliki and Hanafi schools of law, the hand should only be raised in this fashion at the opening of prayer, when some others maintain that it should be done at the opening while bowing and when prostrating. So that's the tafsir for the second part. The second ayah, sorry.
So what I was thinking about when I heard this again, connecting it back to the previous surahs that we read, we saw in Surah Quraysh that the Quraysh are reminded of the blessings of Allah to them. They're reminded of the blessings of Allah to them. فَاعْبُدْ فَاعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. So worship. So there's this connection between worship and being grateful for material blessings. And I would say the Quraysh's blessings were more than material, because they were given a miracle from Allah. They were given a reputation. They were given security because of that reputation, and the security came from the fact that, well, they were helped by God. Their city was protected by Allah. So don't mess with them, right? They were literally given divine protection in that way, in that reputation that they had nothing to do with, that they actually evacuated the city. And Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, said, that is Allah's house and he's going to protect it. So but they were able to use that to their advantage in their trade, and that reputation. So worship Allah, worship the Lord of this house. And then in Surah Al-Ma'un, it talks about the salah and those who forget it, or the salah and those who neglect it, or it talks about how the ones who deny their religion, they deny the feeding of the orphan. So there's this connection between your salah and your prayer and your ability to actually help others, right? And then this surah also about salah. also in a way about gratitude, but also in a way about how do you deal with what's being said? How do you deal with what's going on around you? So salah not only being as gratitude, salah not only being a way that takes you into action in your community and helping the orphans, but salah also being something which you use to focus yourself, to meditate, right? What that the need for spirituality, the need for connection to Allah, the need for coming back to something higher than you,
Mm.
to be able to fend off the challenges and the difficulties. So three different ways in which prayer is described in terms of its
Yeah.
utility to the person, to the human being in these three surahs.
100%.
فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, right? And we can talk about one how, but go ahead. I'd like to hear from you guys first.
Awesome. No, Jazakallah khair. No, it's I see that parallel of how we, especially when you brought up, this has actually been something that's come up in these last few verses, and it reminds me of something I've heard from a sheikh before of how salah has been framed. And I think when a lot of Muslims they want to kind of become more spiritual, they want to learn, they want to educate themselves. They kind of do this thing where they start to search for this kind of religious mentor. I think it's something that's natural. You know, you look for someone more religious than you, someone further in that journey than you, so that they can, you can kind of test what you're doing and making sure your actions are ones that are correct and that you are, you're progressing in the right direction. And I saw a sheikh, asked you want to have a mentor that's the most effective mentor. You want a mentor that's always going to be there for you. It's your salat, and it's something that will refine you over time. That is your tutor, that is your mentor, that is the single thing that every Muslim has access to. Because for someone like myself, I'll be honest with you, if I was, I before I read that, I was a bit lost in that sense of like, oh, I don't know who to find as my role model in that sense. I don't know, because I'm very isolated in that sense. Lots of Muslims are very isolated in that sense. We know that from our experience here at Quranic. We have users in faraway places, and it's like some random village in Norway, and it's one guy with an iPhone, and this is like this one iPhone is like his whole connection to Islam. It's crazy, and but yet still we have this company of and mentorship through our salat, that guides everything else. It's the root. We are the religion of salat. It's not, if we're being honest with ourselves, it's not that complicated, right? A lot of other religions have very complicated religious practices and very arduous and very lengthy. We're asked to pray 5 times a day. It's maybe if that's part of this gift here as well, this blessing upon us that's mentioned in the first verse. The prayer is part of that, I would argue. I don't know if I've detoured a bit there, but I'll hand off for someone else's reflection, inshallah. But it reminded me of that quote.
There's something here, I think, that Imam Adam touched on in the other surahs in the Quran here. I just wanted to highlight my reflection here, when Osman says فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, there's so worship to your Lord and also sacrifice, right? So we mentioned here that the importance of worship as a means of gratitude to your Lord, a way of reaching to your Lord, elevating your closeness to Allah, right? Drawing closer to Him, nearer to Him, to the divine, purifying your soul. I just want to also mention here that in addition, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, right? And also sacrifice. So this concept of sacrifice, especially pre-refrigeration days, right? If you sacrifice a big old animal, there's an underlying assumption that when you sacrifice, obviously you're sacrificing in the name of Allah. But the meat from that sacrifice is going to be, like, it's assumed that this meat will be given to the needy, right? The people who need to eat, right? So the blessing is obviously you're sacrificing this animal in the name of Allah, right? But it's not just like killing animals for love of the game, right? It's the fact that the meat from those animals will then benefit the poor people in your community. So we talked about prayer as gratitude, and I think that's very important, especially because Allah mentions it first. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ, right? وَانْحَرْ. But I just wanted to mention here that gratitude is also using what you have to benefit others, right? In the ayah here, what's being referenced is the case of material wealth, right? An animal, owning one. And then, sacrificing that animal and distributing its meat to the needy. But, we are a religion that demands that we benefit our community, that we interact with them, the weakest of them, the poorest of them, and that we use what we have to better their status, right? That we're a positive impact on the greater community, and that itself is an act of gratitude. I think it's Surah Saba, where Elspeth mentions a nation. I don't want to get super off into the weeds, but they're blessed with so much stuff, right? Like they have like gardens everywhere. They're safe. They can travel between like cities just chilling, right? And subhanAllah, I think they like ask Allah to make their situation harder, which is crazy, right? And their gardens are destroyed, and subhanAllah. But before that, earlier in the surah, Asmata mentions about the blessings that he gave to Dawood, right? Like he gave him the ability to, like a fountain of molten copper, and the knowledge and the abilities to craft that copper into armor. And there's this really interesting ayah. It says, "So work, family of David," right? It's like you've been given the ability, the opportunity, the skills, put it into practice, right? Take advantage of the gifts that you have to benefit the people. This is part of gratitude. Obviously, we can't ignore worship, so I don't mean to say that. Just something I want to mention here, that this one har is very important, that Islam is a holistic faith. We have a relationship with our Maker, and we have to have a relationship with the people around us as well.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. And the way in which the tone, right? The tone of the surah, where the Quraysh are told, you remember Allah's blessing over you. Remember Allah's blessing over you when He did this and this for you. And the Prophet is also told, remember your blessed, remember the blessing over you. But the first one for the Quraysh is meant as a reminder, as a bit of shame, like shame on you. Who do you think you are? It's to deal with their arrogance surrounding them, not realizing why it is that everyone fears them. It has nothing to do with them actually, and everything to do with Allah's bounty over them. And then the tone of this surah is also the same. Like in terms of the words, they're reminding the Prophet about this abundant good that he's given, but it's being said not because the Prophet is arrogant, not because the Prophet thinks he has something that of his own accord, but it was Allah who actually gave it to him. Not for that reason, but actually as consolation for what's being said, as consolation for the suffering and the difficulty and the challenges that come with taking the role that he has. Um, so it's the same words, but they're said in a different way, and they're said for different reasons. And the outcome is the same in both. In the first case, the Quraysh, to deal with their arrogance, they should worship Allah subhanahu wa taala, and the Prophet sallallahu as a part of his consolation, to be consoled in the heart, for his heart to feel like the weight of this burden to be lifted, he must also worship Allah.
100%. Jazakallah khair. Like the inverse verses, different, same kind of tone, not tone, but same direction.
The words are the same.
Yeah.
But
They're
the
actually the
intention
same words
is
as well.
right.
I
The
don't think
words are the same. Worship, 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 worship. Be grateful for this blessing. Be grateful. We've given you this, but it's different. Subhanallah.
Yeah, one directed. Subhanallah. It's just that completely redefined value system. Your value system is nothing materialistic, but purely just competing in goodness. Your ideal Islamic society, community, just competing in goodness. Not how many Lamborghinis do you have? How many camels can I buy and sell? Just
I mean, you're gonna get pearls and gold and Jannah. You're gonna
as a
get
result of
money, smell of musk.
ما شاء الله. الدنيا سجن المؤمن وجنة الكافر.
There you go.
Inshallah. I think that takes us perfectly into the final ayah, which I can just briefly read the tafsir for, and then we'll discuss. So truly, thine enemy shall be one without posterity. I'm going to read the other one just again because that's a bit old English. Only the one who hates you is truly cut off from any goodness. So
Mm.
the one without posterity translates abtar, which can be used to refer to anything whose effects do not produce any good. Abtar was used by Arabs to refer to one whose sons had died, but who still had daughters, at the time at which this surah was most likely revealed. The Prophet had two sons, Qasim and Abd Allah, both of whom died while toddlers. He later had a third son, Ibrahim, who also died as a toddler. It is reported that whenever the Prophet was mentioned in the presence of Al-As ibn Wa'il, he would say, "Leave him, for indeed he is a man who is cut off, having no descendants. So when he dies, he will not be remembered." So God revealed this surah in response. A less accepted account of the revelation reads Abtar as a reference to being cut off from one's tribe. According to Ibn Abbas, Ka'ab ibn Ashraf, the leader of one of the Jewish tribes of Medina, came to Mecca, and the Quraysh said to him, "You are the leader of the people. What do you think about this worthless man who was cut off, Abtar, from his people? He claims that he is better than us, while we are people of the sanctuary, the people of custodianship over the Kaaba, as Imam Adam was mentioned from the previous verses, and the people who supply water to the pilgrims." And Ka'ab replied, "You are better than him." So God revealed this surah in response. For other verses connected to this incident, see 44, 51 to 52, and commentary. In either interpretation, it indicates the importance of loving the Prophet and the dire consequences of hating him, as well as the idea that true posterity or legacy lies in belief and deeds, not children. For the day of judgment is the day when neither wealth nor children avail, save for him who comes to God with a sound heart. That's verse 26, 88 to 89. So I'll open that up. Powerful stuff in the last verse there, actually. Kind of really ties us together with the other surahs we've been reading as we've been trying to
Mm.
do, but that really brings it together, actually.
This reminds me of one of the things that
Yeah.
I've heard recur on a recurring basis. I don't know if it's because of something on social media or I can't remember exactly, but that every accusation is a confession. Have you heard this?
I've heard it, and yeah, it comes a lot. I feel like
Right?
with the whole international politics going on, I feel
Yeah,
like
maybe
it's
it's politics,
come in
maybe
there.
other things, but
Yeah.
it's even in community settings and people settings and human settings where
Yeah.
accusations are confessions, right? The accusation that the prophet is cut off is actually a confession that that is number one. That is one of our greatest worries,
Yeah.
and that we are cut off, right? Um, and that is how Allah actually responded, and that was his that's what he pointed out in Shaniyaka huwa al-abtar, right? This abundant good that Allah has given the Prophet. The other ones, they're completely cut off from this abundant good. And you, O believers, don't cut yourself off from this abundant good.
Mm.
You, O believers, pray and sacrifice for Allah, and you will see that you will not be cut off, inshallah, and you will save yourself from being cut off, like these enemies of the Prophet who were cut off. Not just in the case of their descendants, because you have, Abu Jahl, for example, his son Ikrama became Muslim, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the legacy
Mm.
that they thought was going to be this way or that, or I have a child, so then that's it. I'm good. My legacy is secure. Actually, your son followed the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right?
It's such
So
a,
then what?
yeah.
What was all that about? You know what I mean?
I feel like that's such a divine intervention in that sense. Like it seems like the opposite of what would happen. Your offspring, like some of the best Muslims, came from the worst of the hypocrites. It's such a like
Mm.
inverse of what any like rational thinking would lead you to happen. It's such a I feel like it's such a divine intervention of like, no, no, this is what's meant to happen. Like this is not you're not gonna get your way in that
What
regard.
a glow up, right? Like that
Yeah.
success can be given to you independent of like your circumstances. Alhamdulillah, that's
Yeah.
what that can bless a person from any walk of life, no matter how high or how low in other people's eyes,
Yeah.
And
into
even,
as high as it
by the way,
stands.
sorry to interrupt you, Chris. Even Al-Aas bin Wa'il, the one who was mentioning this, his son, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, his grandson, became one of the greatest companions, right?
Allah Akbar.
SubhanAllah.
So,
I just wanted to mention one thing here that I think is very interesting. So I was looking into the tafsir here a little bit about inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar, because um, I was taught before that the person who said this, they're realistically only mentioned by their enemies who hate them. Like
Yeah.
meaning outside of Islam, who studies the person who said these things, right? And all the Muslims will have only negative opinions about the person who said this, right? But as I was digging into tafsir, I saw that depending on the chain, there's like 3 or 4 different people who are claimed to have said this, that this ayah is in relation to, right? So even on the person who the ayah is about, the person has truly been cut off, right? Because there's even a difference of opinion on who even said it in the first place. And all of them are hated. You know what I'm saying? SubhanAllah.
There's no winning. there's zero win. He's not, and this is, all the enemies of Islam at that time, like you mentioned, are only ever going to be remembered as enemies of Islam. No enemy of Islam today goes, oh, you remember this great enemy of Islam? They probably don't even know their names. They're not memorable people. They're just new generations of enemies of Islam, which just kind of make it up as they go along. There's not even it's like such a self-defeating, well, not self-defeating, kind of Allah is in charge of making sure that self-defeating kind of, the universe is in a direction where that'll always be a self-defeating exercise, is to be an enemy of Islam. And as a result, these are not people with legacy other than just being
The
hated.
haters are forgotten, or if they're not forgotten, they're cursed, basically, by those who
Yeah.
remember them. You know?
Which is exactly what this verse kind of is telling us, is what, it's let me get the other translation. The one who hates you is truly cut off from any goodness, and probably the opposite, like you just mentioned, or cursed. SubhanAllah.
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 May also grant us the drink from Al Kawthar. I mean, so we're not amongst the haters.
I mean, I've this is a bit of a offshoot, but my dad is actually a beekeeper. So usually when we give people honey, they're already like, this is better than any honey I've ever tasted. So now I'm expecting like, whoa, this is like already better than so like
Sweeter than honey, whiter than milk. It smells stronger than perfume. It's got pearls just chilling on its banks. Somebody mentioned gold somewhere. SubhanAllah. I mean, it's not.
gold, and the floor of the river is pearls and rubies.
Allah Akbar.
I always find myself, again, a bit of an offside. I find that when you have all of these images from like the James Webb and over the galaxies and all that, and you look at that, it's just unfathomable. Like all the beauty of that is completely unfathomable. If you, as a human being, woke up every day and spent every day and went to sleep every day, being able to see any of that beauty, I have no doubt you'd be, the biggest Muslim around. Like the strongest of believers. Like there's no way you can't. There's not like you'd be like every salat is like within the milliseconds because you're just surrounded by it. And this
You're
is
saying
like
that every astronomer is the strongest mu'min.
Should be. He's saying should be.
Should be. I believe that. Laith. I'm not making fun of you. I believe that. Laith, they should be. I agree.
But I don't know how do you, but I guess that's in everything, right? Like, so like your physicists, your every like area, like you're studying or like what you're looking at is so it's very, very created. It's very obviously created, and it's very obviously beautiful in creation. So you have to be like quite actively rejecting it anyway. So like I guess you'll be blinded to that either way. Like you can be an astronomer, or you could be like someone looking the other way around, look at how these atoms interact and how the beauty and all these laws that were written for this. It's the whole, I've heard this argument, proof of God is maths. We don't write maths, we just discover it. Like it was already there. Like it's clearly in a way that's for a conscious mind to comprehend. So we're not writing it, but yet we can just discover it. So where did it come from? And you find like all these like people, they just become more arrogant. They're like, yeah, I know how to do it. I know, I'm the biggest astronomer, I'm the biggest mathematician, physicist.
Hmm.
Maybe this is like this is the new trend. This is the science of today. I don't think in history it's always been like that. We know the Ottomans, they use this to their advantage. They look up at the stars, subhanallah, this adds to my conviction, not takes away. So I guess it is a matter of framing in that regard. I know that's a bit of an offshoot, but I'd always think of these kind of images when I'm trying to like think of how outside of your own mind or anything you've ever experienced, like heaven could be. Because it's already like every single time one of these images comes out, it's like I don't even, this is unfathomable. Like I don't even understand what I'm looking at. Like it's like it's
there's
just
this thing in the Quran, I can't remember, it mentions that like when the people of paradise will be given fruit, they'll be like, oh wait, this is just like a fruit I had on earth, but it's not. Right? Like I almost wonder about, even when you're in paradise, I think the mind may struggle to catch up on how amazing it really is. You know what I mean?
What
Because
is
our
this thing?
reference is the dunya, right? Our reference is not Jannah, so yeah, no idea.
I guess we'll have longer
Even though
to.
you're told what Jannah is
Yeah,
like.
you have a while, inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
All right, brothers.
All right, I think we
Jazakumullah
can
khair.
Well, yeah,
wrap up, inshallah. I'll just run through a few announcements for us, just to share with the audience. We appreciate you, the audience, sitting with us through our discussion, through our reflection. We should be live the same time next week, inshallah, to wrap up this series. Got a few more surahs left. And just in the meantime, I'll just give us a few announcements I'd like to share with you guys. First of which I would like to share with you is the beta program. So if I just jump here. So this code for our beta program, actually, if I get that other screen up, where was that other screen? Just give me a moment. Those slides up. Awesome. So if I get this up and the QR code up, there we are. Thank you for your patience, audience. So we are working on a new feature in the Quranic app that actually will allow our users to share their recitations with other users on the Quranic app. And why that's important, why we're building this, is so that readers like yourself, Muslims like yourself, can inspire other Muslims similar to yourself on that journey to reading and reciting the Quran in a beautiful manner. I'll speak personally, it's when you see a world-class reciter recite, you think, oh, I can't ever achieve that. But if I were to see someone else similar to myself on that journey, maybe not perfect, maybe making a few mistakes, but something I can learn from, that will push me further. And that's kind of what we're trying to build here, that community of Muslims going back and forth to actually support each other in this process. So that's what Quran Clips is. It's a new way to experience recitations of the Quran. And we have a beta for it, which we would really appreciate your feedback on. We need to test this and get your feedback on it to release it to the rest of the Ummah. And you can do so by scanning that QR code, and we'll be able to actually onboard you, and you can actually test this out for yourself first. It is on iOS only at the minute. We are working on an Android version, but we are looking for iOS testers. But we do have new features coming to Android as well, and you're more than free to join our beta team to do that as well, inshallah. And the only other thing I'd like to mention is our, I just moved to here, Quranic Arabic alphabet book. And that is actually the phonetics of the Arabic alphabet in the form of English. So if you're an English first speaker, like many of us are trying to go to the Arabic language, this is a good kind of bridge between those 2 points. It kind of explains the phonetics with examples you've seen before in the English language. And if there's not examples, it'll kind of show it to you in another abstract way, like there's different words that we pronounce in English that are kind of similar, and brings you through that process. So it's good for if you're someone like me in my position, where you are kind of starting from an English point, going to a point where you're trying to be a bit more fluent in your Arabic. Even if you're a bit further along, it's good foundation to have, just being able to pronounce each of those letters properly. So then you can build on that to then, inshallah, recite beautifully, as we were just discussing. So that's available on Amazon for $15.99. And that is all the announcement we have for now. Thank you very much to our audience for joining us. We'll be back